The Philippines has ordered a probe into a military plane crash which has killed 49 soldiers and 3 civilians. Security forces are now searching for the flight data boxes from the C-130. It had been trying to land on Jolo Island in the southern Sulu province when it crashed and burst into flames after missing the runway. Most of those on board were recent army graduates heading for counter-terrorism operations in the area. More than 50 people were rescued from the wreckage.
Accidents like this that needed investigation may have other aspects to look into. We look at facility, equipment, weather, skills of the pilot. All this will have to be taken into consideration. To be sure, this is one of the most tragic incidents that happened in our armed forces.
Buena Bernal joins us live now in Manila. Buena, what will authorities be focusing on as they begin this investigation?
Armed Forces of the Philippines spokesperson Edgar Arevalo has thus far identified 3 primary bases for the probe. Number 1 are eyewitness accounts. Number 2, data from the control tower in Sulu province where the military plane crash occurred. And number 3, the black box or the flight data recorder. Now, the focus is on the retrieval operation of that flight data recorder. But despite being probed on the possible angles, on the causes of the possible cause of the crash, Mr. Arevalo instead urged the public to let the investigation unfold. For example, he was questioned on the possibility of the plane being overloaded. There were 96 on board, but he said that he was not in a position to comment on the plane's carrying capacity. Now, the Philippine Red Cross, a humanitarian group with a response team on the ground, said that apart from the dead, there were also 2 houses that it said was totally damaged from the crash. Mr. Arevalo, however, urged the public to avoid speculation, avoid spreading unverified information about the C-130 plane. He said that while the plane was not brand new, it was in a very good condition, and that it had, upon the receipt of the armed forces of the Philippines of that C-130 plane, there were 11,000 flying hours remaining before its next scheduled maintenance. He also said and called the C-130 plane one of the sturdiest, strongest aircraft in the Philippine military inventory. But as part of protocol, all C-130 planes in the meantime would be grounded while investigation is ongoing. And the Philippines has 4 of these planes, including the one that crashed on Sunday. And now, apart from trying to find that black box, the government is also focused on proper treatment of the injured, also the identification of the remains, the charred remains, and notifying the next of kin of their tragic death. Now, we've heard from multiple elected officials calls for further empowerment of uniformed personnel. You have Senator Richard Gordon, for example, saying that continuous training of Philippine troops is a must to avoid loss of manpower and loss of material without necessarily referencing any possible cause of the crash. Senator Risa Ontiveros, an opposition lawmaker, also called for closer investigations, she said, because what's been happening, she said, is a disservice to the armed service if we leave them vulnerable in battle. Now, the crash occurred in a town called Paticol in Sulu province. This is a town historically known as a stronghold of the terror group Abu Sayyaf, known for high-profile kidnappings and piracy in the Sulu-Sulawesi seas. But the Armed Forces of the Philippines says it is in control of the vicinity of the military plane crash, with the Armed Forces spokesperson even warning enemies of the state that military pursuit against lawless elements in southern Philippines will continue to be, quote, relentless, despite what he called a setback.
Buena, thank you. Buena Bernal there in Manila with that update.